Today we will do a session about tools to be able to automate the front-end development. So, as a prerequisite, or as you may know, most of you will already know, we did already a first WebEx formation about front-end tool and framework. This kind of presentation was more general, explaining, what is front-end, and it's kind of a basic for this session. So this session is a bit more oriented to technical skilled people. So the prerequisite is at least that you should know what is CSS, why you use it, and maybe had some experience on playing with it. Have an idea of what is front-end, what we mean with user interface, what are the tools that we use, and be able to code a bit HTML and JavaScript. JavaScript is not required today, but it's good to know what is it at least. And the main goal, the main thing is that you need to be passionate about, and you will learn how to create a front-end application, called also web application, in a proper way. So just a small assumption, of course in 1 hour we cannot cover all the framework, all the tools, so it will be very difficult. That's why maybe you will see something that for you it's familiar, something else that is not familiar, and for sure there will be something missing compared to your technology and so on. This presentation, it wants to be a presentation about more inspiration. So I'm just telling you what's our experience based on the work we did in TCS. That's why there will be also some decision more oriented with, for example, Windows, then Macintosh, only because that's why we use at work. Doesn't mean that it's the better, the worse, and so on. So today I divided the presentation in two parts so that you can, decide what you want to focus on, and I hope that you will focus on all the presentation, of course. So the first part will be about explaining what is CSS in a general way, giving just some example of what CSS can do, why we use Sass and what is it, how we can automate this Sass, that you will see what is it, this compilation of this language, and we will stop at the tools. At this time we will open a question and answer session, and the second part will be a focus on one specific tool. As I said, it's a tool that it's called Prepros, and we will have an example on using and automating HTML, CSS and JavaScript with this tool. Just to let you know, with the presentation you will get also a GitHub link, that is a public project that I created for this session, so you will have all the source code file of the Prepros project. You will understand more this agenda, bit by bit we go through the session. So let's start off why we focus on CSS. Of course, we could focus on HTML5, we could focus on JavaScript, that is mainly, mostly used. But why we focus on CSS is because without CSS you will not have, you will have functional behavior, that is JavaScript, but you will not have a look and feel. So no user interface. So your client, you will see only text mostly and images. And of course today, because CSS is evolving a lot, you will not have also animation, icons, what you see usually as a small icon in the menu, all this behavior. You will not have a proper structuring of typography. You will see in a few slides some example of typography website, like a journal or a newspaper. And the more and more CSS it's evolving, so to also have structuring the pages, and what mainly most of the people know, what is called responsive. So as you know, responsive is the ability of a web page to be automatically adapted to different devices and different sizes of the screen, desktop, tablet, or mobile phone. So this particular behavior of a website or a web application, it's done thanks to CSS, so a specific selector of CSS. As you can see in this slide, I'm starting already to include some resources, some link. In the presentation you will see some link that will enhance your experience about this presentation. So these links precisely, it will list for the people that know CSS but want to know more or more in depth. It lists all the important properties that CSS has, from the basic one like after, before, like a class selector, and so on. So this is not mandatory for the formation itself, but it will be very useful for you if you want to progress. So to give you a real example, not only word, so today without CSS would be kind of impossible, or at least not reach your experience of a website. So let's see some example. I invite you to have a look on the shared screen, because I will just show you 4 websites that you may know very well. For example, LinkedIn. As you know, LinkedIn, as you can see, nice, the new design that went out a couple of weeks ago. If we remove the cascading style sheet, so CSS, that's what looks like the page. We still have the content, we still have the behavior, the links are working, we can click and so on, but we don't have the look and feel. I mean, it will be very difficult for us to find the information that we want and behave a good user experience journey. Another website that everyone knows, it's Google. So Google, that's the main website, the main page with CSS, and that's the page without CSS. As you can see, there are even images, link, icon that are not visible on the main website, because CSS can really, the more and more, can really behave as a functional tools or language. That means it can hide stuff, it can remove stuff, it can move stuff outside the screen, and so on. As I already mentioned, an example, a website that use heavily typography, so it's really based on text, images, and not much more. That is the New York Times, for example. So New York Times, it's full of link, full of text, but without CSS, that's what you get. So you really just get the link and the text. That, of course, is still usable if you just want to read the text, but it's not the same user experience. And as a last example, we have Twitter. That looks like a very simple website, 2 columns. Even you can see in Twitter is the example that I prefer for images. That means all the images are treated via pure CSS, and without your CSS libraries, that's what it looks like. And you can see at the bottom of my screen, the large images is not resized, is not rounded, and so on. So just to recap, what CSS can do. So can do styles, as you know. So it can style your text, like a red color text, a H1 that is the title, H2 the subtitle, and so on. Can manage the responsiveness of your application. So thanks to the selector called media queries, you can define the behavior of your website. Specifically, you can change the CSS, so the class, the style, depending on the size of your screen. You can do page structuring. This is very interesting for the people that are just exploring CSS. It's called Flexbox. It's a specific selector that lets you create what you may call a grid layout. What you have in Bootstrap as a grid, or what you were used to do in the 80s, like table structure in the page. Today you can do it just using CSS classes called flex. You even have properties that with one word like column or row, it changes all your website in a column view or in a row view. What you can do more is animation. As I said, I'm adding to the presentation, as you can see, some link to real example or libraries that will help you to create your own project without knowing all in detail. For example, for animation, you have a library called animate.css, that's the name of the library, that it lets you animate your element, like moving from right to left, bumping, jumping, and so on. For example, you just apply a class, imagine you have a button, and the button you put the class jumping, and the button, once it will load, it will jump on your page. This is also used to animate windows or menu that are not visible, like on mobile you have the right menu coming in and coming out. Can be done just with pure CSS without using any JavaScript. You can even do with animation tooltips today without using JavaScript, only activating it with the hover over of the mouse and so on. And what you can do also is icon. Most of the icons you see on the website, the small icon representing, a person or a menu. These are not images. I mean, they are images at the basics. I mean, they are generated from images, but they are font like Times New Roman, Callisto, and so on. Instead of a letter, they have an images inside, and this is a font that is used and included in your project only through CSS. That means your font, your behavior is like a font. So you have an icon that you can resize, you can color, you can move, you can apply what you have on the other line, an animation, you can make it responsive, you can style, and so on. As you can see, the more and more we go on, it's going bigger and larger and complex. So you can even manipulate images. Many of you know Instagram. You know the effect of Instagram. There are people that recreated all the effect done by Instagram application with pure CSS classes. So you just have your images, you put the classes, sepia, or the classes black and white, and CSS specific classes will transform the images on your web client without using any JavaScript or other languages. And at the end, you can even do shapes. That means you can, for example, a button, you can make a button with the shape of, a star or something else, or even complex shape. And this open all a new area with using shape, mapping, masking in images, SVG. We are not speaking all about these things. So this is a large area that today is going more and more improving. I wanted to focus on this slide, especially because it's very important that you understand how much stuff you can do and how your code can become larger and more complex. So to avoid error immediately, I just want to underline some foundation to start. So CSS, it's something that helps you to structure better your page and your visual. So what we were used to do long time ago, what we have in the column do not, it's including your style inside the main page. So you have 10 pages, the index page, the about page, and so on. And on each one, you define your font, you define a style precise like color red, padding 5%, and so on. Of course, you could do it. I mean, you can do it. Technically, you can do it, but it's not a good way to do it. Why? Because using CSS, that is cascading style sheet, means there are files outside your page that you include in your page. In this file, you have a list of style divided mainly properly, or at least listed, that you can use all over your 10 pages of website, for example. That's why we say that one of the pro of the CSS is the maintainability. That means you have one or more than one CSS file with inside the class that define your title, like 20 pixel red, and you apply the same class all over. You don't have to duplicate your style, what you have in the column on your left, in all pages manually. It will be also faster, your page, because the more and more we evolve CSS definition with CSS2 and CSS3 now, you can also replace images, as we do today, with icon and using web font. So at the moment, okay, we say we have this CSS outside, we have our style, we can improve our icon and images. But what's the problem if we have a huge project like a control management system or SharePoint, taken as an example? So we can easily go to have even 10,000 lines of code. So yes, it will be structured, but it will be difficult to find your information. So it will be difficult to change the color for all your title if you have defined more than once, if you have, on the line 3000 another definition, and so on. And another problem is that the more and more browsers, as you may know, support a bit differently CSS classes and selector. For some specific class, once they come out, for example, you need to define the class with a name. Imagine opacity. In Chrome you write opacity. In another one you need to have what is called a prefixer. You need something that tells to Explorer, Internet Explorer, or tells to Mozilla to recognize this opacity as a valid opacity for the browser. Okay, what you may see, it's a line with the name like mods, another line, and the name of the property opacity. So this kind of problem, because it's becoming larger and larger, are becoming, huge, because you need to be able to have full control on your CSS style, because as you saw in my previous slide, they are controlling almost everything of your user interface. So that's why we have what we call preprocessor of CSS. We will speak today about mainly about Sass, even if I'm in my slide I'm presenting example of less and stylus. So what is a preprocessor? A preprocessor is a language created by, usually it's an open source language, the three of them are open source, created to compile your Sass or your less or your stylus file and transform it into a CSS. Why this one? Because as I already said, CSS is incomplete. We can easily have larger file, and thanks to Sass or other precompiler, what we can do, we can use the power of this language to divide and create a structured CSS. So we will go deeper and deeper. So the Sass, keep in mind, stay for syntactically awesome style sheet. That's a funny name that they gave. Sass, it's a language. You code with this language. You have something that compile this language and transform it in CSS. And now we will see the benefit going through the main element of a preprocessor. Sorry for the error on the slide. Let's see the power of this preprocessor. So what you can do with this kind of languages. With this kind of languages, and I will give you an example, you can have variables. So you can have, for example, defining a variable for your color. Imagine that you have a website that is blue and black. So you can create a variable defining the main color and another variable defining the second color. And what you will do in your Sass file or less file and so on, you can include the variable and use it as a object-oriented language. That means you can use your variable in multiple files, and once you want to change slightly the color, or you have another client but you need the same structure of CSS, you can reutilize the same variable, changing the color, and it will change and impact on all the different files you have. I will show you a real example for every point of this slide. I just want to give you an overview. So you can nest, that means you can structure the way you write your CSS. So as you may know, CSS it's a declaration language. That means to define a color, for example, for a list, you need to define the name of the class and LE, that stands for the tag list, and you put the color. So in line you write, of course, the class, the tag, and inside you have the selector. What you may want to do is to apply multiple selector to an ID. For example, you have your website and you have a square, and inside you have something, and you put an ID and you say, okay, I want to apply all the style for the button to this table. So you cannot structure intuitively your CSS. You still have today to copy and paste your declaration to go deeper and deeper. So you define the UL for starting of the list. After you say UL space LI, so to define the line of the list, and so on. We will see how to solve this problem. You will have mixing. Mixing is very, very powerful. It's like the naming is different. That means it's like a function that can have properties. So you can have a function who create a specific block of CSS for you, and you can just use it and passing precise properties. A real example, it's a background with gradient. You know that the background with the gradient starts with a color and with another. So you can have a mixing that is called whatever you want, gradient of my website, and brackets, you put the color, starting color, and the finishing color. Automatically, Sass will recognize, pick the mixing, create the proper CSS for you. And after you can have a function, you can extend, you can have if or else, you can have loops, and you can have function. Function are precise function already created in the language, in Sass. Sass has his own function, less also, and stylus other one, that can provide you ability to change something. For example, there are functions to change color, hue of the color, saturation of the color, and so on. Let's go some real example, some code that you can already play and use it. So as we said, variable, it's very simple. It's change only the syntax depending on the language you prefer to use. As I said, we prefer to use Sass, and we will see why we will prefer to use Sass. Mainly because Sass is closer, if you can say like that, to CSS way of writing. So it's not trying to emulate. It's trying to emulate CSS to help you to be more productive and do not have to learn a new complete language. As you can see, stylus, for example, from the screen, you need to have proper spacing, otherwise you will have error. So depend on you, but for basic usage, to start immediately, it's better, it's easier Sass. So let's continue. So variable, it's easy, straightforward. You have a variable and you can apply the font variable to any element that you want. If you change 16 with the 17, your div will have different font size and so on. The nesting, as you can see, usually you have to write a selector, as I said, in a separate line and copying and pasting. Now you can easily wrap them and nesting them. That means, look on your screen, on the Sass example, you still have some variable on the top to define the link color and the link overlay when you pass on the link. And you can define UL. The margin 0 is defined for the UL, but if you put LI inside the UL element, automatically you can define variable, you can define anything for the LI. And the third selector is the link, and you can say that for each link in a list inside the UL, you will have a color of 999. And what you see on the bottom right, it's what your browser, after the compilation that we will see in the second part of the presentation, it will read and interpret it. So your Sass will be compiled in what you have on the bottom right of your page. Mixing, as I said, it's kind of in other language it's called a function, but it's a function of at which you can pass different parameters. Parameter can be colors, can be number, and so on. For example, this one, it's a mixin to create border, so that you can pass the width of your border. As you can see from your screen, you can even imagine that you can improve this mixing just adding the color that you have like defined as DDD, putting as a parameter. So the next evolution of your code will be bordered with comma and color, and so on. Start to think in a more object-oriented CSS way. A real example of what I said before, it's creating a variable for one color, for black color, using the variable in a mixing. For example, I have a mixing to create a background images, defining all the different position, background color, the parameter. I use it in a real example on the third block, and I pass my parameters. That is the background images, it's called header.png, it's positioned on the right, and my color, it's one of my multiple variables, in that case is black. The result on your CSS is the last block you see. This is a real example, and even if it's a small example, you already see the benefit, because you can change the black variable with any color, and it will be impacted on your result and on your mixing. You can even extend and improve your mixing, and you can even divide physically the color, the variables with the mixing and with your navbar inverse file. It's what you will have in the second part as a real example, and it's what is doing also Bootstrap today. To go further, we have also extend. So extend, it's very useful, especially if you take the code of someone else. You already have a sort of class defining, for example, I don't know, the size of a button, a specific button with a gradient and so on. So you don't want to, and you don't have to, copy and paste, because otherwise you will create unmaintainable code. So what you can do, you can extend a precise class. As you can see, I have somewhere a class called block that define a margin, and I say, okay, that's a small example. I say I want to use the exactly same properties. So I extend the block class. This is very useful. If, for example, if you use Bootstrap, you have, as you know, 4, if I'm not wrong, or 5 type of button color, and you want to create another one for your project, you know? So you don't go and copy paste everywhere you have the class btn. You extend space dot btn. So you extend the class that already exists of button, and you override only the color that you want to change. This is very, very powerful. As I said, you can have function, and I'm putting a link of Sass language because they list all the function. You have function to manipulate string, to map, function to manipulate list, function for number. You will see the benefit the more and more you use Sass. I give a small example. You have, as I said, imagine Bootstrap or some framework, and you have a color. You have the primary color and the secondary color, but you want also something in between, and you don't want to create a specific color, or you want specifically to have a color that is 50% of opacity. So you have function that transform immediately your color with a different percentage of opacity, of gradient, and so on, saturation, and so on. And that's only a tiny example for a color. As I said, you have also statements. So in your Sass language, to create your CSS, you can even use loops, and you can even use else statement. This is important if, for example, you want to create different style for different, I don't know, sites, or for different to use responsiveness. So it's limited only to your imagination and to your project. And as you can see from the example on the slide bottom left, you can even use what we saw function previously, like lightness color, and detect what is the color of your image. If it's more than 30% opacity and so on, you have other behavior. So you can even create something that if the client or the user enter a specific color, you do something on the page, or you move something on the page without using JavaScript, but just using pure CSS. And of course, you have mathematical elements to manipulate and transform different type of sizing. For example, as you know, you can have pixel, as everyone know, but you can also define your font or your space of the page with percentage, with em, like line size, and with other. So all these languages let you transform them, use them. For example, you have a website and you want to have a space on the left, on the right, in percentage, and at a certain point, for some reason, you need to transform it in pixel, or you need to have the exact amount of pixel. So you can use all this mathematical function to say, I want to add 2 pixels to something that is defined as 20% of my screen. I mean, maybe you don't see the benefit now, but once you start to manage all your structure of the page and layout with grid or flexbox, you will see that you will start to have the need to mathematically change your value and so on. And at latest, you have import. Import is the kind of basic one. It's what we do once we break our Sass. So we have multiple, as you can see, it's called .scss. We have multiple Sass file. The extension is .scss or .sass. You will see later what's the difference. you have different folder with different elements that define one define your form style, another one define your button, another one define your layout, and with the simple import you include in one only file that you may call default.css or main.css. So once you know the power of the CSS, you have two types of approach. That means you can start good, that means you start from zero, as we do today. You have a blank page and you say, okay, I want to do one page or multiple page, I want my style, I want to define my variable, I want to define my structure, and have something new. So I start defining at the beginning all my Sass and so on. But what happened in the real world, what I call real world approach, what happens when you go to a client, they already have a website, and of course they have huge amount of CSS. What you should do and what we do, it's what we call deconstruction. You start small, that means you create your structure of your project, of course, with Sass or less. And you take the large CSS and you decompose the CSS bit by bit, because you can copy and paste plain CSS and put it in a SCSS, in a Sass file, and the Sass file will just compile the original CSS in another, the same one-to-one CSS. So you already divided physically your huge CSS according to if it's defining the form, if it's defining the style of the typography, it's defining the grid, and the more you work on the project, the more you have structured website. After that, you go on each file and you can transform it manually in a nested Sass with variable, with mixing, and so on. And this is a real approach. That means usually what you get is not like Bootstrap, a framework divided already in Sass. What you get is 10,000 lines, and bit by bit you start to work on a button, after 1 week on a grid, and so on. To go further, we are not going in deep on each one, but to go further, I want to tell you that Sass can support also other frameworks that will help you even more. And 3 of the main frameworks are Compass, Barbon, and Suzy. So now that we have a knowledge of CSS, we know that we need to use Sass to decompile our CSS or to structure our project and to be able to evolve it. What we need to know is how we compile this file into a real CSS, a proper one, a minified one, an optimized one that we have tested, and so on. So, of course, some obvious that we have to compile, but what the point is that we can compile with a lot of stuff. There are editors like Visual Studio, like IntelliJ, that they already have compiler inside. You can compile with something that you create by yourself. We will have an hint on this one. So you have your own automation tool, or you can have tools, as we see in few slides, that are already done, software that you can use and they compile for you. At the very beginning of Sass, this type of language, there was mainly less. There were applications that only were able to compile less to CSS. So you had to install this application just to compile. A small clarification, because for sure, most of the people will have this before going on the second part. Let's clarify. So Sass is the name of the language. The language started with two different way of writing. So you can write Sass with SCSS or with just Sass. Okay, so you can create from zero a file. You can call it .sass or you can call it .scss. Your compiler will recognize and will transform it in CSS all the time. What's the difference for you? The difference is the way you have to write your code. If you write in SCSS, that is mainly what we use today in Neon, in TCS Neon, you write, as you saw from the example, you write like a CSS. You have a syntax that is one-to-one as CSS. A class is today, it's every time a dot and so on. An ID, it's the symbol and so on. The second one, Sass, it's more for people who prefer conceived code, so structured code. So you have to have brackets instead of semicolon. You have to indent precisely, otherwise it will not compile. It's a choice. If you are more used to coding with a language similar to HTML, so it's up to you. So now we are to the point on how we compile. So we have two main ways to compile our Sass, or to compile something in general. We have the guided user interface. So we have application, for example, CodeKit or Prepros. And we have also the full control way, if you can say, what we call the automation front-end automation, via command line and via JavaScript that configure your automation. So today we will speak about guided user interfaces, so tools. In the next WebEx, we will go deep on a full customization, because it's better to start with the product that do it for you, to at least understand the potentiality and the benefit. So let's continue. Today we present the way of compiling via a software. Why we use Prepros and we don't use CodeKit? Mainly because what we have as a laptop is a Windows-based laptop. So if you have a Macintosh, you can even buy and install CodeKit. What they do, it's mainly the same things. The difference is the platform, and the price is also $32 or $29, something like that. So let's see what is Prepros. So Prepros, you install it. It's an application. It's an application that lets you compile, we can say, almost all languages, including Sass, Less, Stylus, Markdown, maybe someone of you know, Babel, that let you, Babel, for example, you will listen about these things. If you start to do like Angular 2, if you start to do JavaScript, the new release, like the EMAScript 6, we are not speaking about this one, but just to let you know that this software, it's very powerful. It includes all this library, and you don't have to know them. I mean, you don't have to know how to compile. He is doing it for you. So as you can see from the screen, this is what looks like the application once you have a project. And so how you start and what you can do. So what you can do a lot of stuff. You can do things that usually a front-end developer had to do with different tools, or nowadays you can do it with some editor. There are editors, for example, that can already do all the stuff that do prepros or CodeKit. Okay, this formation is more for people that they never used any of this kind of automation. But for example, in Visual Studio or in IntelliJ or in Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, and so on, you can have plugin, you can have things that do the same stuff that prepros do it. Okay, I'm not saying that prepros do something that others don't do. It's just a starting point, different starting point. What you can do mainly, you can do concatenation of JavaScript, and you will have an example in the slide later. You can log, and you can have error because you can code. It's kind of it's a kind of your repository for your project. You can concatenate JavaScript. What we saw, you can import JavaScript one inside the other, things that JavaScript cannot do so easily and so quickly standalone. You can minify file, you can even minify images and optimize images just with the button, you know. You can do a preview on the network. I will show you. That means with the button, that is the button that you have beside the name of the project, you can immediately see the project compiled on your browser. You can even do the real testing. This is very interesting. Your project can be seen on a screen and even on a mobile that is connected on the same network. And what you can do, you can inspect your code remotely, and you can build and deploy. That means you can build your project, so create your CSS, your JavaScript, or your HTML that you have deconstructed before. Of course, as we said, CSS you deconstructed with Sass and so on. And you can build it, and you can even deploy. If you have an FTP, automatically you can deploy it, or you can just create a folder that you can give to the client, or you can use for your delivery. It's a kind, this utility, a mix between a server, kind of, without a database, you know. It's what we could call a WAMP or XAMPP for front-end developer. Okay. And a very nice and important thing you can do, it's a live reload. What means? It means that once in the meantime you are coding, on the left you see you are changing the background in color tomato, and you change the color of the page in white, and instantly on the screen you have on your left or on another screen, your page automatically compiles the things, redeploy the application on your local server in prepros, and you see the changes immediately. This is very useful. And you can even see the same changes on a device like a screen, laptop, and a mobile that you have in the hand of your colleague. So, to don't get lost, and because we cannot do live coding via WebEx, what I did for you, I created a project that you can find at this link. You will have, of course, the link of this presentation. In this file, you have a basic web page, one page. You have one page. The page, it's structured and it's compiled with prepros. So it's a template, if you can call it like this, for a blank prepros website, if we can call it like that. So it's easy, and I will show you what you can do. And so by tonight you will be able to use prepros and code your application and play with Sass and other preprocessor. As I said, it's easy as 1, 2, 3, as Michael Jackson say in the song. So 1, you download the folder, or you synchronize my project with your GitHub. Number 2, you drag and drop your folder on your prepros project software, and what you will have is what you have on the screen on your right. You have the project that is called Prepros Structure Aldo Ferrari. And on the right, you have the list of your file. And once you will click on each file, you will have all the possibility to do minification, concatenate, and so on. We will see in detail. Number 3, clicking on the button that I highlight with the yellow square, immediately you can see your website, so your index page, with JavaScript compiled by Prepros, CSS, precisely Sass, transformed and compiled in CSS, and HTML page compiled from Kit. Now we will see what I'm talking about. What the project use? The project use mainly 3 compiler. As I said, we can compile Sass into CSS, and that's what we saw in the first part, but we can also split our HTML pages. This is very useful if you imagine that you have 20, 30, 40 pages, all of them, they have a header and a footer that they are not changing, okay? Or they are changing slightly with some parameter, like the title of the page is changing. So you can create pages that are called kit.kit that automatically are compiled into HTML pages. And what you can do easily, it's a properties of Prepros itself. Prepros can include different JavaScript one inside the other. It's just to be able to divide your JavaScript according to your functional behavior and use it. Just as an information, a general information, for sure there are other ways to do the same stuff. For sure there are templating tools that are better than Kit, but what's the focus today? It's to start very simple. So with these 3 tools and with Prepros, tonight, I mean by 4 o'clock, you will be able to download the project and use it. And your page will work and will be optimized, minified, and so on. Of course, I would be very happy if you will challenge this presentation. That means you already know this stuff and we can go further in deep to create or know different templating tool, different concatenation JavaScript, and so on. Let's see these 3 examples in the project I created for you. To compile HTML, what we mean means that you will have, as you can see, a page called index.kit. In this page, you will code as normal HTML, nothing different. The only thing is that with the syntax of Kit, you can add variable and import different block. You can import HTML pages and also Kit pages. As you can see the example, on the left of your page, you have index.kit that include one variable that is the title of my page. And I include also what you have on your right, that is another file in another folder structured with other file like header, footer, and so on. And this head.kit include, for example, my meta tag, and I can import it can import it automatically in the index.kit. What these things will become once it's compiled, and how you can compile? So that's simple. So on your right you see the Prepros application. In the square you see the folder where I have the head.kit, the file that we saw a few seconds ago, and the index.html on the same area is the one that is compiled. How you compile, how you create things with Prepros, it's very simple. On your right you will have a column with a button that is process file. That's it. And he automatically will process the file. Of course, you will be able to choose where you want to save it, if you want to minify the file or not, if you want comment in the file or not, if you want Babel to recompile your JavaScript, if you want other compiler to do stuff. It's kind of limitless. On your left of the screen, you see what's the final page that I can deliver to the client, use in my web server, is the simple index.html. What I have inside? I have inside my meta tag that we saw in the head.kit, compiled with inside also the variable of the title that is called I'm the page title. What we did, easily, we divided our index page in header, footer, script, and so on, and we can decide where we want the HTML compiled, and if we want more than one, and so on. Now let's go to the CSS. So the same project, we have a folder that is called Sass. Inside we have all the Sass of Bootstrap. So we have Bootstrap already divided with, as you can see from the central screen, the center of your screen, you have bootstrap.scss that import. You see, we are already using the notion that we got in the first part. So we are importing Bootstrap variable, Bootstrap mixing. We are importing the different component of Bootstrap in a separate file. That means we can have the control all the time of what we import, where, and if we want to change it. What we have also, we have the main CSS. What I said to you is the CSS that you will include in your header, in your head of your page. And this one include, in that precise example, include only Bootstrap. I put some comment to push you to evolve this project, so you could do your own component, or you could download different CSS and include different CSS in your SCSS. As usual, how you compile? It's simple. So you select the file main.scss. On your right, as you can see, automatically it's checked as auto-compile. That means every time you change the file, doing nothing, the software will automatically compile your SCSS into a proper CSS. You can see with just a check, you can also add auto-prefixer, what we said. You can decide if you want to minify your CSS. And what you can also do, as you can see on the left of your screen, you have the SCSS that is compiled in the file that is called main.css. This file, I decided, it's a choice, to not minify the file. This file can be the file that you use during the development, because it's not minified, so you can a bit easily find your error and so on. And automatically, just with a check of a button, you can say that each time that the main.css is created, automatically it's compiled in main.min.css. And this one is the one that you will include in your project. Let's finish with compiling JavaScript. The principle is the same. You have one JavaScript file. As you can see on your right, you can decide to use or not Babel. You can decide to use or not Uglify.js, Mangle, and so on. I'm not going through all the different compiler. What you can do with the syntax that you see on your left, prepros append, it's the same syntax that do an import. Okay, so you can divide your JavaScript in different files, and you can even divide by folder. For example, you have jQuery in the folder of vendor, so that the next people that come on the project know that you are using Bootstrap and you are using in the vendor folder jQuery 1.11. As you can see, structuring the project like this, even in a very basic way, it's very useful for your team, for yourself if you come back on a project, and for the evolution of the project. And as you can see, the main.min, it's minified, and you can decide at which level you minify. If you want to mangle, that means change the variable and so on. It's very, very powerful, but easy to use. So now you are ready to develop. I mean, you have the basics tools. Of course, there are different ways to do it, but that's a starting point to start all together investigating and playing with these tools. To finish, I want to show you a couple of real examples of work we did using the same approach I explained, without adding more information. This is a website of a bank in Switzerland. This is before we changed the CSS. And what we did is what I explained to you. We deconstructed more or less 7,000 lines of CSS. We divided in CSS, and that's the result. So today, the client, in that precise case, could change the variable of main color that is green and change all the website in red. He can change the size of the font, like changing only one variable of the font. And if they want to add more element or different component, they know exactly in which folder they can do it, where to import, and so on. Another example, even on an application that is using very old type of code, that is an application done probably in 1998, something like that. So the CSS was really almost unusable, you know, lot of images and so on. Thanks to the power of the CSS that we saw at the very beginning, so transforming images and so on, we structured also this CSS, and we transformed the page that you have on the left to the page that you have on the right. Just to give you an idea, to do this page and compile with prepros, working with prepros, and explaining also to the client this tool, it took 5 days. So it's something that even only in 5 days you can do something really of a huge impact for a client that was stuck with old CSS that no one was understanding. At least today they can understand it. So next session, if we will have a good feedback for this one and people will be interested, we will speak about automation, but in a more advanced way. So we will be able to decide precisely how we can automate, where we want to automate, which line we want automated and which other one we want not. We can compile a part of the website with less, another one with Sass, and so on. No limitation. So thank you very much for your time. So for me, it's the end of the talk, but I hope it's a start for your journey. So it's up to your question or suggestion.